And all of a sudden, we've lost that innovation. We've lost, in some cases, the very people.
Uh-oh, Carney's plan is falling apart. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today, Donald Trump coming out and saying he's not annexing Canada. This is completely imploding Carney's plan here. I'm sure they were thinking about a majority government, a big majority government, having an election in 3 or 4 months, and now that's probably been put into question. We also have a conservative blowing up this Grays Bay plan up in Nunavut. What it's really for. Got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got a bunch of stories being pushed around. This one, Canada in the European Union. Polls suggest broad openness to the idea. Why? They did a whole elbows up campaign that we're going to be a sovereign nation and now we're going to join the EU. This is the dumbest idea. Why wouldn't we be part of the country that's the biggest economic force on our continent, as in America? You can't make up this nonsense. If they really wanted to join someone, it would be with America. Of course, you got all the mainstream media pushing this garbage. What happened to us being a sovereign nation? Moving ahead, another story, you saw it in the previous video, being pushed by La Presse, that there's up to 10 MPs currently in talks with the Carney Liberals about floor crossing. This is not democracy. This is just bribery and corruption. And as this guy here, Kyle, pointing out, at what point does this become undemocratic? I mean, clearly if 10 more people cross the floor, this is not democratic. We're already at a point where we're having more floor crossers than ever really happens in a short period of time. Moving ahead, we've got Mark Goldberg, telecommunications consultant, founder of the Canadian Telecom Summit, blasting the government here for a CRTC security certificate expired through the weekend, still down for the third day. This is embarrassing. He says this is the agency that Canada expects to be regulating the digital economy. How can it credibly make performance demands on service providers that it fails to uphold itself? Not even close. And we've got Embrandt following up here with this, showing $4 billion of shared services Canada contracts for 2025 across 1,431 contracts. These guys can't even keep their security certificates up to date. This is a government website. Moving ahead, we've got the Iran situation heating up. Donald Trump laying it out that by, I believe, tomorrow by 8 or 9 p.m., they have to open the Strait of Hormuz or they're going to start blowing up all their energy, electricity infrastructure. And so Iran's come out with a 10-point response here. Senior U.S. official describes the Iranian response as maximalist and said it is not clear if it will allow progress toward a diplomatic solution. We've also got Iran foreign minister saying the U.S. pilot rescue mission. This is a mission to go get a U.S. pilot. Apparently there was 2 or 3 American jets that were shot down. They did get one of the pilots, but apparently one of them was still down on the ground. And then the Iranian minister saying that this may have been a cover to steal enriched uranium. Got Robert Fife from the Globe and Mail posting this. More Canadians willing to serve in armed forces during major conflict, poll suggests. As Bradshaw says, willing, they're not even really signing up. Sounds like a liberal. Who wants to fight for Canada right now when Carney is ripping us off? Why would we fight for the country right now? That's how sad things are. No one wants to fight for an uninspired, horribly corrupted, conflicted leader. Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump dropping his bid to annex Canada over respect for King Charles. So originally this dropped on The Telegraph. First, we'll just show you what they're putting on global news here.
U.S. President Donald Trump's erratic foreign policy agenda has left large swaths of our country feeling uneasy. And while many don't view military action against Canada as a realistic possibility, new Ipsos polling done exclusively for Global News shows how Canadians feel about our armed forces in the hypothetical event of a military invasion.
This is so ridiculous. They're paying for polling data on how many people think America is going to invade Canada. This is how dumb this is. This is propaganda to scare Canadians, and it worked.
The percentage of Canadians who have dismissed the prospect of a military invasion and the percentage who still view military action as a realistic possibility.
We found about half of Canadians said that they don't think that it's realistic that the U.S. would ever attack Canada. But we did find some really interesting demographic differences. We found that women were more likely to think that the U.S. was going to possibly attack, and Gen Z were more likely. On the flip side, it was the boomers and men who were more confident that the U.S. wouldn't be attacking. But it is.
To sum this up, half of Canadians are scared that Trump is going to invade Canada. And this is no surprise because that's what the split was in the polls with liberals and conservatives. People got scared, people got bamboozled, and now Carney is tanking our economy and getting rich in the process.
About 50-50, and that's a number that I think, had we asked this question even a year ago, would have been closer to 80-20 or even 90-10.
This is so ridiculous. So there's a little bit more polling data here further on. So they've got it here. 37% of Canadians believe we could defend ourselves. 77% believe that NATO would come to our defense. Are you kidding me?
Looking at the data that you collected too, how many Canadians would be willing to join a training program or even fight in the event of an invasion?
Well, we didn't find a tremendous amount of support there, although, I think it was around 43% that said that they would be willing to do that. And when you think about the number of Canadians who are able-bodied and would be able to serve, that's not too bad. What we see is really willingness to serve in hypotheticals is lower than perhaps it would be in an actual situation.
I'm sure another factor in all of this would be leadership. What did Canadians say about which leader they would trust most to handle a military threat from the U.S.?
Well, on this measure, that Canadians feel more comfortable with the Prime Minister than they do with Mr. Poilievre. Mark Carney.
This is just wild that the Prime Minister that gaslights and is using fear propaganda against his own citizens is the one that Canadians trust.
Got better marks on this issue by a significant margin. That is possibly reflective of the fact that Mr. Carney is currently the Prime Minister and recently made a speech in Davos, which got widespread.
Oh, please, the speech in Davos. So yes, it is true. He'll get a bump at just being Prime Minister, period. This is the kind of garbage that people watch.
Mr. Poilievre tends to be seen as better able to manage things like affordability and crime. But on this particular issue, Mr. Carney is the leader that Canadians feel would be best able to respond to any potential invasion by the United States.
So you hear that there. Poilievre better on the economy, cost of living, all that, but Carney better on fighting back against Donald Trump. Well, that brings us into our story today, because you can see they put this out April 6th, as in today. This is when they put this out. This wasn't from like a month or two or 6 months ago. This is today they're putting this out. And then we have this story from the Telegraph. Trump says he won't invade Canada at all. This is a dagger in the heart to Mark Carney and his team. U.S. President says he won't have time to deal with Ottawa after suggesting it would become America's 51st state. The U.S. President questioned whether Canadians still recognize the king as their head of state as he weighed up the problem of taking over the territory during the rest of his time in office. I suppose the Canadians have got 200 years of history and all that "Oh Canada" thing, he said. You can't deal with that in 3.5 years. I guess it's not going to happen. That is a pretty big statement here. Trump saying this 51st state thing is not going to happen. He's completely wiped this off the table. So I think Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives need to blow this up and make sure everyone in Canada hears this, because Mark Carney's not going to do it. Mr. Trump was interviewed by Robert Hardman, the royal biographer, for his new book about Queen Elizabeth II. During the interview published by the Daily Mail, Mr. Hardman reportedly asked Mr. Trump to please leave Canada alone, saying it would undoubtedly make the King of Canada happy. This is ridiculous. King of Canada. Do they recognize the king, or have they stopped that? Mr. Trump asked, to which Mr. Hardman said Canadians still recognize King Charles as head of state. No, I don't. Basically, most conservatives, if not all conservatives, don't recognize King Charles as a head of state. Even probably a lot of liberals don't. Then he goes on to blast the Carney liberals here. He says, but they have these terrible politicians. They're nice to my face, they say. Then they say bad things behind my back, Mr. Trump replied. He might be talking about Trudeau as well. Adding that the cold weather meant that most Canadians live near the U.S. border anyway. So he goes on to talk about they should have just redrawn the line 50 miles north, and then everyone would have been a part of America. Goes on to talk more about the king and all this kind of stuff. The main takeaway here is this one line that says, I guess it's not going to happen. So Donald Trump saying the 51st state thing is now, it's gone. And he's probably realized that it was a bad idea to do it, because now China is getting involved in Canada because of all this. He's essentially created this elbows up nonsense with the liberals, flared up all this TDS, and now the liberals are using this to bring China more into our country. So I'm glad he came out with this now, at least try to take away Carney's power. What's interesting is we're still going through the Kuzma renegotiation, Trump taking this off the table. Carney wants to flare up the TDS. So are they going to make a deal, or is Carney just not going to negotiate and try to make Donald Trump scary, even though he's taking away his power here? Of currently, we see the liberals trying to blame all the problems in Canada on Iran. One of them that will be compounded, liberals plus the cost of oil is food. As a food professor pointing out here, crude oil is now $109. Fuel surcharges are already hitting the food supply chain. This is how it starts. So he just goes on to mention here that if this doesn't come down quickly, then this will get baked in and it'll never go back down. And he says food inflation begins this week. So we're going to have further increased prices. And of course, the liberals are going to say elbows up. This was all Iran. This was nothing to do with 10 years of bad liberal policies. So with that, Donald Trump saying 51st state is off the table now. Mark Carney getting us in bed with China. We're seeing a whole bunch of things moving here. So let's just bring this back up. In 2021, Canada's parliament voted unanimously 266-0 to declare China engaged in genocide against the Uyghur population. And it goes on to say here that Justin Trudeau and his cabinet abstained from voting. Mark Carney wouldn't say it even exists because, well, Brookfield does business over there. So with that, we've got Conservative Gabriel Hardy coming out with this bombshell bombshell coming from Mark Carney's $900 million announcement proposing a new road to Grays Bay in the top of Nunavut. He says for 55 years, no private money has deemed it profitable to pay for this road itself, and today the Carney government proposes taxpayers pay up to $900 million to build it. So let's just break this down a bit here. This is all in French, but simply put, we've got Gulf, Texas discovers Izok Lake in Nunavut in the 1970s. They estimated 15 million tons of zinc. Now, the price of zinc was much higher. They proposed a road be built up there so they could develop this. It was going to cost $350 million to build the road. The government of Canada said no. This was in 1992. So between 1992 and 2009, the mine changed hands. No one could make this profitable. This is not a profitable mine because there's no road up there to make it happen. And then that's when China steps in. So we've got right on here, MMG Mining. MMG Mining, we mine for progress. Izok Corridor Project exploration delivers excellent results. This was in February of 2025, just a few months ago. We're talking 4 or 5 months ago. This company, MMG Mining, who currently owns this mine, found excellent results up there. Mark Carney announces this project, upwards of $900 million to build it. As we've got Gabriel posting here, $750 million of your taxes goes towards building the infrastructure to allow a Chinese state-owned company to extract resources out of the north, out of Nunavut. Looking at the road, this is the proposed project here, this orangey road from Jericho up to Grays Bay. We see High Lake within this region here. Looking on MMG's own website, and you can see here, incorporated in Hong Kong with limited liability, report of exploration results, Izok Corridor Project. And this is it zoomed in. So there's High Lake, and then we've got Izok Lake down here. And these blue areas are MMG mineral claims, and the black ones are MMG ML and Code 29 agreements. So these are their areas here that they want to mine, but there's no road. And this white area here is the proposed road though. So while they're saying this will open up Grays Bay, they can build a port, blah, 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 this really looks like the major winner here is a Chinese company, a mining company that will have access to our critical minerals. The one thing that Donald Trump doesn't want China to have more control over because they already have the monopoly on critical minerals and refining critical minerals. And here's Carney doing China another favor. The liberals have been in bed with China for so long, they're completely compromising not only our country, our relationship with the United States, which is exactly what China wants. They want to make us weaker, and more importantly, they want to make America weaker by coming through us. And Carney is completely compromising our country. You can see here MMG Limited. This company's headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. But if you look at the holdings here, which you can see on investing.com, top institutional holders, we've got China Minmetals Corporation owns 67.4% of the entire company, followed by China Securities Depository and Clearing Corporation owns 10.5%, as in 78% of the company is owned by Chinese companies. And the rest are all the main players here. FMR, I believe, is Fidelity Management and Resources. Then you've got BlackRock, Vanguard, all the main players. Meanwhile, we've got stuff like this. China seeks Canada's help to join Indo-Pacific Trade Pact. Oh yeah?
What if I told you that forced organ harvesting in China isn't just about medical crimes and profit, but it actually reveals how China's Communist Party sees you as expendable in its war against America? The CCP operates with a zero-sum mindset where any American success is viewed as their loss. They measure power through what they call comprehensive national power, or CNP, viewing global influence as a fixed pie where someone must lose for the CCP to win.
This is how they operate, and this is what they're doing. They're coming through us to get more power over America, and Mark Carney is opening the door wide open because, well, he's wrapped up in it. I mean, the liberals have been wrapped up with China for a long time. John Chrétien, Justin Trudeau. It's just one corrupt liberal after another, and they're making us weaker for it. And Canadians are paying the price for all of this, literally and figuratively. If we look around today, what are we seeing? We're seeing Canadian companies being bought up by American companies, by Chinese companies, companies leaving Canada. It's almost like the liberals are planning this. We got Jasmine posting this clip here from CPAC. Billion-dollar companies getting sold to foreign buyers. Canada's losing our mines, our forestry, our oil and gas infrastructure. It's all being sold off to American or Chinese companies.
These startups over $1 billion. In fact, that's one of our most positive metrics. We've already met our 2030 target. But then when you look at another metric we have, Canadian champions, our target is 40. Global champions, top 10 by market cap by 2030. Our goal is 40. We have 20. Right? And they are RBC, no surprise, CIBC. They are Shopify. We have those 20 top 10 by market cap. But what happens, where's the gap, right? There is a gap. And I think this is probably your question in terms of the $1 billion startup. they end up being sold in so many cases, right? They're sold to a larger company in the United States or Europe or Japan, wherever. And in fact, what we need is to ensure we have the conditions that those billion-dollar companies will stay in Canada and feel that they have the support and the means to become a 5 billion and then a 10 billion company. And then if you're the Royal Bank of Canada, many hundreds of billions of dollars, right? There's this gap. And these startups are innovative. They're the people who take an idea and develop it and create new platforms that we barely imagine, new products that the world will need and want to buy. But then someone in the United States, for example, comes along and says, I'll buy your company. And all of a sudden, we've lost that innovation. We've lost, in some cases, the very people who built that startup. And we cannot afford to do that.
And that's what's happening. I mean, we just recently saw Canada's been removed from the Y Combinator, the startup ecosystem. Not to mention our universities, we pay into these universities. They develop all these new technologies, patent them, and then they get sold to America. It's absolutely abysmal how our country's being run. We're taxed out the wazoo, and then everything we create gets sold off or moved over to either America, to China. Nothing's for Canada. We pay for everything. We get nothing in return aside from gargantuan grocery prices, increased carbon taxes. I mean, Carney and all those liberals got a nice little pay bump there April 1st, increased the industrial carbon tax. Canadians getting screwed.